Good morning, everybody. Well, good evening to our guest, Richard. Good afternoon to Ivan. We're in three different locales today, or three
As usual.
as usual. But we went international again. So our guest today is Richard Tromans. Richard is the principal of Tromans Consulting, and he is also the blog author, blog creator of Artificial Lawyer, which is how I had found out about Richard. But let me tell you a little bit about his background. Founder of Tromans Consulting, based in London, also the founder of the Artificial Lawyer blog, which was recently recognized as one of the top 50 information sites in the world on artificial intelligence. He has spent over 18 years working in the legal sector, focused on UK and global legal markets, and his focus as a management consultant is on strategy and innovation. He advises law firms, in-house legal teams, and also legal tech companies on a variety of business issues. A little bit more about the Artificial Lawyer, which is how I was introduced digitally to Richard when I started reading his blog. Again, he was one of the top 50 sites on the planet. And I think, and that was this year, that was March of 2017 that he got that honor. It looks like that came from feedspot.com. Is that right? Who recognized you on that, Richard?
It's just the company. I don't know the particular background to it.
Okay, all right. And also in March of 2017, he was listed by Thomson Reuters as one of the top 10 sources for keeping up with legal tech. And I have to say, that's how I found him. Welcome to our guest, Richard Tromans. I'm Nick Rishwain. My co-host, as usual, when he's available, is Ivan Rakelin. Ivan, would you like to say hi and tell us where you're at today? Did we lose him? We lost him. Okay. My apologies. I'm looking at Richard. So, Richard, please tell us about yourself a little bit. I read a few things off Tromans Consulting and off of Artificial Lawyer law blog. Tell me about yourself.
Should I tell you kind of how I got into all of this?
Yeah, let's hear how you got in, where you started for Tromans Consulting, and then how you kind of walked in or moved your way into the Artificial Lawyer blog. So tell me where you got into the legal field.
Okay. Basically, it started about 18, 19 years ago. I was a business journalist originally, back in 1999, which seems like a very long time ago now. So it was the dot-com boom, and there was a whole explosion of desktop publishers, publishing capability, which launched a whole new bunch of magazines, one of which was effectively a startup, was Legal Week, which not that long ago was bought by American Lawyer, if I remember rightly. And I joined about 2-3 months after Legal Week had started. So I was kind of like employee number, I don't know, like 20 or something, And that was very, very exciting time. There was like 5 years of just incredible change in the legal market, but not a lot about technology. Technology wasn't really seen as a strategic issue. It was like there in the background, but the real issue was like mergers, business growth, people hiring. It was all about the sort of nuts and bolts stuff. I then did a little stint as a foreign correspondent in Paris, which was nice. Then I came back and I started working for Hildebrands, which in those days was called Hildebrands International, which I think at that point in the sort of mid-2000s was the biggest legal consultancy in the world for strategy and advice, run by the very famous Brad Hildebrands, which I'm sure everybody knows. And it was part of Thomson Reuters at that point. It had bought by Thomson Reuters not long before. And I worked effectively as part of the strategic intelligence group. which was doing a lot of data analysis. We used to work a lot internally with the tech guys and the data analysis people across Thomson Reuters Legal. And they were producing, a lot of good stuff, even in those days. Did that for a bit, and I started getting dragged into consulting jobs. People were like, hey, could you go to Spain? Because we've got a client who's thinking of opening an office, and could you go down there and do a bit of research and talk to people? So I did that, and then I thought, I really like this. So then I started working with Jamati, which was another consultancy. I did that for 5 years in London. And then after about 5 years, I just thought, well, time I, put out my own shingle.
Cool.
So I did that 2 years ago. And I started initially just doing the bread and butter, helping law firms with merger, helping law firms, business expansion, international networks, do quite a bit with international referral networks. And then the issue with AI in the legal space just kept on growing and growing and growing. And initially, I'll be honest, I was very cynical.
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very, very cynical. And I think a lot of the cynicism that I felt was partly because the people writing about it initially were just, I guess, people like I used to be, just, people who were focused on the day-to-day lives of law firms.
Mm-hmm.
And there didn't seem to be there didn't really seem to be anyone really covering that space, that intersection between AI, which I guess is a pretty obscure technology, even now. And the realities of big commercial law firms. There wasn't that kind of focus. And I just thought, okay, well, I'd wanted to write a blog for quite a while, and I never got around to it. And I just thought, yeah, let's do it. So I just started it. In fact, June this month is my first anniversary. It's 1 year of Artificial Lawyer.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I mean,
but a human still writes it, right? Not a bot?
No.
Yeah, well, to be honest, if you can find a bot that can write up press releases, in fact, there are actually ones that do that. I would love that, because that would make my life so much easier.
I have to say though, because Richard and I had a chance to chat before this, a little bit beforehand, Ivan, and I was telling him that we had been doing our show now. We're going on, I think August will be the second full year. I think it'll be August of 2017 will be the second full year of doing the show.
We had our starts and stops, but yeah.
There had been, and with doing something like this, with changing platforms and all that information, we lost some of our data, and that's why you only see 30 episodes instead of probably 55 or 60, because data was lost. But I was telling him, Ivan, my experience and what was that it started as an umbrella legal tech, and now we're seeing these subsets of legal tech, LegalAI being one of them. And in the last, probably from my perspective, in the last 6 months, I have started seeing the artificial lawyer just putting out. I mean, you put out a ton of content, and I'm like, I can't keep up. There's so much great content here that it has been just a whirlwind year for you. It seems like with the blog.
Yeah, it's been an incredible learning experience. I mean, I had some basic grasp of the key ideas, but it's very, very hard to understand legal AI systems, like whether it's doc review, litigation prediction, billing analysis. And now we have some really interesting, or even more left field developments. You've got companies like Voltaire, for example, doing witness or jury, how can we call it, profiling, I guess you could call it, to see how they're going to fit with the case in litigation. All kinds of things going on, and it's just going to expand and expand and expands. So it's almost as if as I was writing, the market was evolving.
I bet, and that's what for our listeners who maybe are unfamiliar with AI in general. You mentioned, you began to mention that there's subsets of now legal AI. the doc review, can you tell us what some of those subsets are, and maybe a little bit about how some of those might work?
Yeah.
And maybe a deeper dive into litigation. What did you call it? Litigation prediction?
Well, there's two aspects. There's standard, well, it's probably unfair to call it standard because it's still quite extraordinary, but there's litigation analysis, which is effectively backward looking at the data to draw out insights. And then there's sort of forward looking, using that data to make predictions about what other possible cases might result in. But let me just backtrack a sec. So initially, and I think for a lot of people still, LegalAI, call it that, effectively got associated with doc review. So companies like Raven, Kira, Seal, more recently Luminance, Legal Robot, who's also out there in California, eBrevia. There's a whole list, and I'm sure I've missed out a few. Apologies.
And when you say doc review, just for is that also what is often referred to as tech assisted review?
Yeah, you could kind of, well, now we're straying into the realm of e-discovery. That's the fly in the soup, because that slightly complicates things, but we'll come back to that in a second. So basically, what these guys are doing is using natural language processing, NLP, which is, as you know, software that is very sophisticated and can effectively read sentences and clauses. So we can, like, rather than just saying, well, we think this document is a sales contract, and we roughly think we know what's in it. It will just strip out. You can say, right, show me the change of control clause, or if it was some kind of management agreement or whatever it is, and it will just pull out the information for you, and it can do this on a huge scale. So people started to think, well, if I'm doing a really major piece of due diligence, and this is where it came into its own, if you're doing a due diligence job, you could have thousands and thousands of contracts. The actual amount of risk attached to each document is probably pretty tiny,
because
it's a bit like
very standard contracts, probably over and over, same information. Is that why?
Exactly. Mostly it's all pretty straight stuff. But occasionally there might be something that really stands out. So, you've got to be responsible if you're the general counsel, and you do the whole lot. But it's incredibly slow because people have to read it. It has to be, then you, I guess to some degree, you might have certain piles of documents in the data room that you're worried about, and then sort of more senior associates will come in and they'll look at it, and it's a very laborious process. And then meanwhile, while all of this is going on, bits and pieces of information are being dragged out and stuck into Excel sheets, and the different associates and paralegals have different ways of doing it, and it's a real mess. It's a really incredibly inefficient, slow, and frankly inaccurate way of doing things,
and very costly.
And very, very costly.
Yeah.
So, that was just like sitting there going, please change me.
Right.
It was just really not the easiest way of doing things. So NLP came into that and has had a great and very positive impact. It's for things like examining leases and extracting information from property leases. But that's just the beginning. You can get into all kinds of stuff. What about employment contracts? Let's say a very large company like Walmart that has, 100,000 plus employees. Yeah, maybe more than that, probably. I don't know.
Probably more than that now, but yeah. Okay.
And the GC gets an email from some government agency saying, we've just changed one of the regulations on X. Could you just check all of your employees and, make sure the employment contracts are right in that, Or they just think, well, I need to address that potential risk. And they're like, yeek, I've got to review like 200,000, whatever, employment contracts now. That's like, it's going to cost millions. Like months. And the work will probably be not that good because the people doing it will be exhausted. Let's use NLP and machine learning and and an AI system, and let's get into it that way.
Right.
So that's the doc review space, and it's
Okay.
very, very, very effective. And that also links to e-discovery, but it has a different use case because, you know, in e-discovery, one of the key things you're doing, you're trying to eliminate stuff that you don't think is important.
Right.
You're separating out the sheep from the goats in terms of the documents, to put it really simply. And what the NLP can do, that can really help, because you can not just look for keywords, you can start to analyze documents by complete clauses. It's much, much more sophisticated. And there's a couple of companies that have started to use more advanced NLP methods in e-discovery, and I think that will just grow and grow. So doc review and e-discovery, which used to be very, very separate, or AI doc review, e-discovery, are kind of like going like that. They're going to sort of merge, I guess, eventually. So that's one little group. Then the other group is, as Ivan was saying, the litigation analysis and prediction.
Okay.
Which is basically using prior court cases and court records and judges, summings up and so forth, to analyze that data and then use it to predict what will happen next. So,
or in maybe like a future similar case, you'd be able to predict the potential outcome for that.
Exactly. Or even if you couldn't predict a total outcome, you could predict certain aspects. So, for example, what previous cases often get cited, what are the winning arguments, what particular judges generally permit certain types of motion and deny others. So you can start to get quite granular, and you can break down various aspects of a piece of litigation. So there's that. Then
who's currently at the forefront of that then, Richard?
There's a bunch of companies doing it. I mean, Lex Machina and Ravel have done some great stuff. They are now both part of LexisNexis, which makes sense because LexisNexis has a ton of data. Then another very good company doing this is Premonition, also based in the US. And they get very granular. They've looked at the success rates of individual lawyers, which is really fascinating.
Nice. Yes, absolutely.
Because you need to speak to them to get the details, but I mean...
And this is Premonition, you said?
Premonition, yeah. I mean, the strike rate, the success rate of some of the top lawyers out there is way, way below what you expect it to be. And some of the best, the most successful lawyers consistently at winning cases are people who you would not expect necessarily. It's really fascinating. I mean, every general counsel should have a look at that one.
That's interesting. One of our previous guests, Unicourt, they were working on a similar analytical function for, and they weren't there yet with that. They actually did a lot of other related case law analytic type of work, but they were working on something similar to that. So I do want to reach out to Premonition and see if we can have them on the show and learn more about that, because I think that's great information for a potential client.
Absolutely. I mean, they've got a sort of interesting story about how they started. I mean, one of the co-founders had bought a piece of property. It was like a little mall. I think it was in Florida. I'm not sure if it was in Florida. And they got hit by a court, by a piece of litigation, claiming that they hadn't provided the right kind of access, disabled access, even though it was only a single story. They really need elevators and stuff. And they just thought, well, we don't know anything about this lawyer. You know, does he have a history of making frivolous claims? Does he always do this? I mean, has he made this particular claim at every single mall in America, kind of thing?
Right.
You know, and if he has, well, then that will help us with the judge to get it thrown out.
Right.
You know, does he always do this? That kind of stuff.
Built from necessity. It was built from necessity, essentially.
Exactly, and to be honest, if you go back and talk to the majority of the founders, I mean, some are different. I mean, I think Raven, their founders were not lawyers, but a lot of them were either lawyers or people involved in some type of legal issue, who were just like, wow, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And that
Right.
drove towards AI
Yeah.
in many cases. But yeah, so that's the litigation and prediction. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. I could talk for an hour on that. But yeah, also you should probably have a look at Metonymy Labs.
Okay.
They're very interesting too. They're very focused on patent litigation
Okay.
and using AI to examine what patents can be challenged and what can't.
Very cool.
Yeah, and they're working with a litigation funder.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah,
So,
we'll have to talk to them. I did want to bring us back to, did we cover, we had doc review, the e-discovery, litigation analysis and prediction, and was there another kind of subset?
yeah, it's a whole bunch. So okay, so then we've got legal billing analysis.
Oh, that's right. That's the one of your more recent blog posts was about this, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose you could also call that legal, I don't know, production analysis. So what
Okay.
goes into work. So basically what they're doing is when a lawyer writes a line item, I did this piece of work and this is what I did. That stuff just generally doesn't get read, and the machine, until natural language processing came along, couldn't read it. You could read the numbers, X case by X law firm took 500 hours and it generated X tens of thousands of dollars in fees. And if you want to really break it down, you can see all the different hours and all the different people involved. But does a general counsel really want to read every single line item? Some of them which can be quite complex. I was at a, and this happened and then that happened and then there was a phone call about no. They're not going to read it. It's just too much. And because it's too much data to analyze, you can't really extract any value from it. You can't get any meaning from it. So for the last 10 years, there's been this huge debate about in-house counsel pushing back on fees or demanding better efficiency or demanding price predictability, all this kind of stuff. And how should we construct a fixed fee? Because the general counsel wants to demand a fixed fee, but from the external firm, but they don't want to be too pushy. They don't want to demand something that they're not sure what they're asking for because they haven't got the evidence behind them. Because they're thinking, well, if I say I'll only pay $50,000 for that, but they don't have the data behind them from previous examples, they might not be sure. Maybe they're asking, but maybe they're underpaying too much.
Right.
So they want to cover their own backsides by this. They want to push back, but they want to do it based on evidence. So, and I remember seeing quite a few articles written after 2008-9. There was this huge wave of pushback against external firms on their fees, and then a lot of press started writing, well, we don't see anything changing. There's a lot of talk in the air, but are they really pushing back? And I guess the reason why was because despite them wanting to, it was very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have a human guy on your shoulder going like, be more logical, be more efficient,
Right.
tell me why you're paying this. And like the general counsel's like, one, I've got a day job already. I don't have time to go through all of this. And two, if I did, I wouldn't be able to get any real data from it because I would just be sitting there, scrolling through all this stuff. So AI can come in, it can break down the data, it can classify, it can sort, it can look for comparisons, it can draw out patterns, and off we go, off to the races again.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And then there's another couple of others which are quite small niches. I'll just mention one other, which actually I should probably mention two others. One is witness or jury analysis.
Right.
Which
Which is really interesting to me for my day job. It will be interesting to see how that. I do want to pause you there because Ivan says that he's going to have to run in a few minutes. I want to have. We will get back into the witness analysis in a second. Ivan, did you have a question you wanted to ask before you got to let us go?
No, first off, I actually wanted to really quickly introduce myself. Because we jumped right into it, Richard. So real quick, Richard, Ivan Rakelin. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at my profile. So I'm a non-practicing recovering lawyer, similar to Nick. And I'm involved in different things to include investing in and advising some startups, none in the legal tech space, but I do have a passion for it. And actually, I was going to ask a question, but then you started down the path of jury analysis. I think that's actually more interesting.
You want to cover that?
Train of thought. Are you using, essentially, you get a juror, and then you do a background analysis, essentially using some social listening tools to determine where they're inclined, where they stand on different issues. For example, using their social media to determine, all their publicly facing data to determine how they would probably decide on a particular topic or issue. Is that
exactly
similar? I mean, is that kind of where?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Fascinating. Elaborate, because I don't know much about it, and I don't know how much Nick or any of the listeners know how that's developed.
Yeah, please elaborate on that. And this is, I think, one that we will want to have a future guest on who's doing this. But please elaborate on that. I don't know much about this. This is new to me in the legal AI space.
Well, if you get a chance, and Ivan, because if I remember rightly, Ivan, you're into running. Is that right? You should talk to.
Yes, I am.
You should talk to a founder called Basit Mustafa. I think he's based in Colorado, and he started a company called Voltaire, which does this analysis. And he's really, really into long distance running as well.
Oh, cool!
So you guys would get on. So
nice.
But I mean, the real question is the sophistication of what you do with that data once you've collected it. I mean, there's a ton. It was actually quite scary when I realized how much public-facing data there is. And it's different in Europe. We have different rules.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the US, it's incredibly transparent, the amount of information that you just kind of like leak out. Not just your social media, but 1,000 other things.
Right.
Just come out. And people put so much information out anyway,
mm-hmm.
on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. So yes, and then it's about how you use it. I mean, if just a sort of quick example, let's say that there's a trial about, car accidents, an automobile accidents, and one of the jury members is a car fanatic, total petrol head, loves it, How do you analyze that data? Because he keeps mentioning cars.
Petrol head? That's a new term for us, I think.
That was a new term for me.
Sorry, it's an English phrase. Yeah. So
I
it's how do you interpret that? So every day he's popping out emails and social media things about cars and how much he loves cars. How do you interpret that? Do you kind of go, well, he's this guy's obsessed with cars, and is he going to be a benefit to the jury? Because he obviously knows a lot about how cars work, about traffic stuff. Is he going to be helpful? Or is he going to be a pain? Is he going to be sort of much more sympathetic to the driver rather than the guy who got run over? So that's the tricky bit. I mean, once you collect all that data, what do you do with it? So I think these companies are in their infancy, but I'm sure they'll get very, very sophisticated quite quickly. So it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, this is
how do you avoid a follow-up question would be, how do you follow up and determine whether or not the bots are actually on that account and pushing out content on behalf of the user? Because then the human being has no relationship at all with the content that they're pushing out.
True. I mean, I think, you would have to check. I guess if you've got a jury, because you've only got, 12 people in the jury, you would be able to then at that point bring in a human who could then check and have a look at the data and say, does this actually look like a real person who's pushing this out?
Yeah, the difference I would say, Ivan, on that is that you're going to know who the human is ahead of time, and see, rather than, if when we meet somebody through Twitter, we don't know if they're a bot or not. It takes some time for us to identify that it's a bot that's running a certain account. Thinking that you'd be able to, once you've established who the juror is, you'll be able to kind of backtrack it and compare some of what they've said in their jury questionnaire with what you're seeing on the social platforms or other.
Right, and that interaction, you could pretty much ask them as well.
Yeah.
If they're actually using their account, I would think.
I think it would be easier at that point. This is fascinating stuff. We do need to work on. You should reach out to the runner, Ivan, and talk to him about running and get him on. But what we got about 10 minutes left here, Richard.
I'm gonna actually, gentlemen, I'm gonna go ahead and Richard. I just wanted to interject real quick. I really do have to run, unfortunately, physically and literally and figuratively. So it was a pleasure briefly talking with you. And if you can reach out to me on Twitter, if you don't mind sending that information of the individual that's in Colorado,
pleasure.
I make it every once in a while, and then maybe we can connect. Hey, Nick, thanks again for hosting this. And
all right, Ivan.
All right.
Cheers, guys.
Talk to you later.
All right.
So I mean, we're running out of time, so it's.
No, we don't have to run out of. We can go a little longer. I just don't want to keep you up on your.
Oh no, I'm fine. I'm good for the hour. But I mean, I think what this illustrates. I mean, there we are at the beginning, talking about legal AI, like it's like this thing, and then we end up talking for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just about 4 different kinds.
Yeah.
We haven't even. I won't talk about chatbots and expert systems because
Right.
people in the past talk about that. But
we have.
This is all part of the spectrum. Less so. Well, depends who you talk to. And there's a huge debate about are rules-based systems AI systems, and when does a rules-based system become an AI system? When does a chatbot enter the realm of AI and so forth? And that is a huge debate, and we could soak up a couple of hours on that. So let's not. But basically, I think the key takeaway from this is that people are starting to get their heads around about there's a thing called legal AI, and we probably need to know about it. And we need to integrate that into both our law firm strategy, and the general counsel need to integrate that into their in-house strategy. And the vendors out there who have not started to look at AI yet also need to do that. They need to start to think about, are we going to build our own? Are we going to try and merge with someone else? And the smaller, newer legal AI companies who are coming onto the market now, or are in a sort of, early seed stage, they also have to think, this market is growing very rapidly. Like 2 years ago when they probably started their legal AI company, the market was very quiet. There wasn't much going on. They felt that they had all the time in the world to develop. There's a frenzy of activity now. I mean, I've had 3 meetings with different private equity funds in the last few months, all trying to ask me what is going on with legal AI, and trying to get, do a bit of a brain kind of suction,
Right.
We want to tell us everything, kind of thing.
Right.
Because they're genuinely interested.
Yeah, which is great. That I guess I would qualify that statement. I think it is great, but are they doing the brain suck from you as far as AI in general, or are they interested in legal AI?
Legal AI, and I remember one person said quite specifically. I said, but even an $800 billion market is not big compared to selling, chocolate bars, which is way bigger on a global scale.
Right.
And plus the law, it's a complex, it's a highly regulated market, not an easy market to get into, specialized knowledge, Why are you interested? And they said, basically, it's one of the last bastions of the economy that really has not innovated and is still in the past. That was their point of view. And you might say, well, that's really unfair. The legal market has really tried really hard to catch up. And a lot of great things have happened indeed. But from their point of view, sitting there with a bunch of banks and hedge funds and all these other guys they hang around with, from their point of view, they're like, wow, these guys are really, a lot is going to happen.
Yeah, it's been the experience of myself and many others in the legal tech field that, or at least the local in the California area that I've talked to and met with, that you know, it's a difficult industry to get to adapt to new technology. They're very, it's still very traditional. So I think those VCs that you've interacted with are right, that it is a difficult trying to get lawyers, because they don't have the time, because making money is based on billable hours for the most part. And taking the time to try and learn a new technology that might make your firm more efficient or something to that effect has been difficult for them to do. Well, I can't spend time on that because I have to bill my hours.
Exactly. And I mean, this brings us to another point, which is, how do you do innovation? You know, easy to say, but very hard to do. To create something really substantive, which creates either a huge productivity increase internally, or, because it's not exclusive, creates a product or a service for the clients, the end clients, that really delivers new value. You know, it's a whole new proposition. And it's a very, very interesting one, that, because, you know, if you talk to the tech vendors, they're all about, you know, solving a pain point. You know, every time we interview one of the AI companies, you know, how did you get there? And maybe it was an ex-lawyer or whatever it was, and they always say, well, this is pain point, I've got to solve it. You know, it was just, you know, it was killing me that it was so inefficient. We had to solve this.
Right.
Look at the legal market. Are the law firms sitting in the offices of the general counsel going, you know, please tell me your pain points. Let us do everything and anything we can in our capability of this billion-dollar law firm. Resources coming out of its ears.
Right.
You know, huge amounts of capability, potential capability. Going like, whatever you want, whatever you need, tell us your pain points. You know, what is wrong with this process? What is wrong with the organization of how we're producing this work for you? You know, how can we make it better? Now, some law firms are doing that.
Some are adapting to that, as I've heard, and others are merging or going out of business, or there's been a lot of consolidation in the last few years in big law, from what I've seen. A lot of big mergers. So it's good to hear that some are trying to make that change, but it doesn't seem that there's been the incentive to change rapidly.
No, and it's an interesting one, that, because this kind of rolls back to my strategic consulting work about mergers and so forth from law firms, is that legal AI systems are not very expensive. You know, they're not cheap, but they're, in some cases it's very hard to make a sort of A/B comparison, but, you know, $180,000 associate who basically uses a highlighter pen for a year, not much else, he's not providing great value, you know, especially if the client starts to push down.
Yeah.
I mean, $180,000 associate is fantastic value if the client is willing to pay what at the end of the year will be 3 times that guy's salary, that guy's salary, which is where we are at the moment, mostly. Right. No. But those days are over. You know, it's coming to an end.
Right. They're slowly coming to an end. I would say they're not entirely over yet, but they are coming to an end.
For sure. And it's like when people say, you know, the partnership model is over or big law is over, and you're like, yeah, you sure? And then, like, you know, the AM law gets published, AM law 100 gets published, and it's like, profits are up by 5%. Mary Smith at Wachtell Lipton, whatever, has just made like $5 million this year, and you're like, yeah, that's a completely rubbish model. It's not working.
Right. And it does seem that it will have to come from GCs and from the customers. But it seems like it will have to come from those. But what I think many of us are seeing, those of us with experience in the legal market from some you know, as a business consultant, as somebody in legal tech, I feel like those who have tried to find ways to reduce the cost of litigation at some point, or what you talk about as the pain points, are also pushing it. So I feel like it's getting pushed from a couple of different perspectives. We've got the clients coming in, we've got the technology firms coming in, we've got the GCs pushing on this kind of backward system that's incredibly expensive.
Exactly. And then we have this other factor, which is the LPOs and the alternative legal service providers like Axiom.
Right.
And they're using, you know, artificial intelligence systems now. You know,
interesting.
Axiom, it's public. I wrote about this. Axiom and several others are signed up to Kira's certification and training program for the use of Kira's AI software. And obviously they wouldn't be doing that unless they were using it. Right. So, you know, and LPOs are linking up with AI companies. So, you know, there was news this week that Seal, you know, the very well established legal AI company, also in California, who has just linked up with a Dutch LPO.
Okay.
Working on transactional stuff. So, you know, it's happening. So if there's a feeling really that if the law firms, particularly the slower law firms, don't catch up on this, they're going to kind of cede the market space to these other people.
Right.
Which would be, you know, silly because, you know, why not? I mean, even if the general counsel is pushing down on particular pieces of work, you'd still want to take it if you could. If you could still make a good margin by using it, why wouldn't you do it? But also, I think it's a very, very important point. We don't want to get too reductive here. This isn't all about fitting price pressure. You can use AI to be very, very creative and generate products and services. I mean, I was just talking to iManage and Raven, who you know, just merged recently, and they've got some great ideas about how to generate new services, new applications to the software that they already have, which will be tremendously useful and add value to the clients. You know, and there are many law firms, well, at least a dozen, who are really actively trying to create products, AI-driven products.
Oh, cool.
So it's, you know, they're either doing it themselves or they're working with an AI company.
Right. Right.
Mix. But the key point is that, yeah, don't get too dragged into this is all about meeting price pressure. Price pressure is hugely important, but it's only one half of the other thing. And the other point is that just think about productivity gains.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What we've heard, what we had heard over and over in law school, and when you got out of law school, I went and worked for a small firm where I jumped right into doing actual legal work, not what many people do after they start at a big law firm, which is just doc review, which is not training a lawyer for anything. So if you can reduce that doc review and let it be done by an AI technology, you can free up those associates to actually work on something substantive.
Exactly. And probably at a higher rate. And the key point is that then puts pressure on the firm to generate more work. But so it's a change of mindset, you see. And this is, I guess this is the key point I'd like to make is that AI obviously is technology, but it's not a technology issue. It's a change management and strategic business issue that is going to change the way that law firms operate. And it will affect all parts of them. It will affect billing, the work that different types of staff do. It will affect the remuneration policy, because there's no reason to push so hard on certain aspects of billable hours. You want to reward partners for embracing AI and running a good team in relation to whatever technology they're using. So effectively, AI becomes central to the operation of law firms. It moves from a fringe thing that maybe the IT department might have looked after in the past. document management system, to a living, breathing part of the entire firm,
Mm-hmm.
at the heart of it. And it will affect the business development people, the marketing people. It's going to affect all of the client relationships. It's going to affect the way that the younger lawyers are trained,
Mm-hmm.
because thinking that 2 years of doc review is good training will out the window.
It's got to go.
Yeah. All kinds of things. I mean, I could talk much more about it, but I guess we don't have time. But these are strategic issues, and so fundamentally, both the law firms and the in-house counsel, and I think to some degree the smaller legal tech companies who perhaps haven't thought all the way through what their real value proposition is in this strategic landscape, they need to draw up an AI strategy.
I think that's and to do that, if they were, and you're right, we're running low on time, but what I like to tell all of our members is, this stuff is, or all of our guests, is that this is changing so rapidly that if you'd be willing to come back to the show in 6 months and give us an update, we'd love to have you, because I'm sure there's going to be some amazing changes by then. So. But in that situation where you think about adding a legal AI strategy to your legal tech firm or your legal tech company, is that where somebody would, if they need assistance and such, would they reach out to you at Tromans Consulting?
Well, it's an area where I've helped people. I've helped major law firms and also very large corporates shape their thinking to understand what they need to do to develop that strategy and to help them to make those decisions. So absolutely.
Okay, great. And where would, if somebody's watching the replay on LegalTech.live or LegalTechLIVE.com, we have both of those websites. If they were watching the replay and they were interested in getting a hold of you, what are the best ways to get in touch with you?
If you'd like to get hold of me with regards to consulting, helping you with AI strategy, you'll probably best contacting me through tromansconsulting.com.
Okay. Tromansconsulting.com.
Practice. And my email for that is richard@tromansconsulting.com.
Okay.
And in addition, if you want to just keep up to date with the news about AI, legal AI, please pop in and have a look at artificiallawyer.com. You could sign up to a newsletter. So every time I write a new story, you'll receive an email in your inbox of what the new story is. I try and write a story every day or so.
Yeah. That's what I've been noticing.
But yeah, and also, actually, can I say while I'm on air, if there are any people out there who would like to do guest posts, always happy to accept guest posts. If there is any enthusiastic person out there who perhaps would like to help contribute to the news blog, I'd be very interested in hearing from you. I don't have much of a budget for Artificial Lawyer. I've only just started accepting advertising and sponsors.
Oh, cool.
That's just begun. So budget is limited, but perhaps if someone's out there, that'd be quite helpful to have a chat with them.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Well, I am glad. Like I said, I'm really happy that you agreed to come on because in the last probably 6 months, I just started seeing more and more Artificial Lawyer and realizing that you were putting out really high quality content on the subject matter. And I feel like it was an area that really needed some focus. I've had an interest in it for a while, in the robotics and AI, just as sort of just as an interest, but I just didn't know a heck of a lot about it, and I still probably don't know a heck of a lot about it. But I know that your blog is a great resource for me when I want to go and learn something about a particular issue, or I want to keep up to date with. I think I got to say, I think you were the first publication that I found that talked about the Lexis Ravel purchase. I felt like I found it on your blog first, even though I saw TechCrunch and some others covered it later in the week. I want to say I saw it on Artificial Lawyer before I saw it anywhere else.
All right. Well, and that is actually one of the challenges, is that I started off writing about whatever I saw that was interesting, and now so much is happening.
Yeah.
It's actually hard to keep up on the news, It's, so yeah, but we'll see how we get how I sort of keep up with that.
and I'll have a tip for when we finish recording. I have a tip for you that might be helpful in that. So I'll run that by you and see if you're using this tool that might be some assistance in keeping up on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to wrap up for today. Thank you. Richard Tromans is our guest today. He is the founder of Tromans Consulting. You can find that at tromansconsulting.com. You can email him at richard@tromansconsulting.com. And he is the founder and main author, almost entirely the main author of the artificiallawyer.com. I'm sorry, artificiallawyer.com. A great blog on everything that's happening in legal AI. Richard, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. It's been nice. I appreciate it, and we hope you come back again in the future.
Thank you very much. I will, if I can.
If you can.